Welcome to Pulling Chain, the blockchain distributed ledger cryptocurrency news channel for the capital markets industry. I'm your host, Steve Edge. Well, I thought I would start our first show talking about Economy. No, not the debt-riddled anemic one we hear about almost daily, but the Slovakia-based blockchain startup. They claim to be the first fund management platform for the budding decentralized ledger world. They're using the Ethereum platform, which seems to be quite popular these days. It's co-founded by Tim Zager and Yanni Valjavec. I hope I said that correctly. They have a cryptocurrencies index, among other things. It's a capitalization weighted with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Dash making up the top 3 coins in the index. And there's monthly rebalancing as all good funds should. It's an interesting benchmark, possibly becoming an underlying for a future or an ETF, of which we will mention later on. Their ICN token launch has been delayed, though, due to the recent network attacks on the Ethereum network. They do plan to launch an actively managed investment fund investing in, you guessed it, startups. They will also have an open fund management platform allowing anyone to launch and manage their own fund. But how will this platform settle securities trades? Everyone's trying to figure it out. Economies' initial coin offering raised over $10 million, becoming Europe's largest crowdfunded project to date. More than 3,300 people subscribed to this ICO. Innovate Finance with E&Y and Hogan Lovells, a UK law firm, recently published a paper called Blockchain, DLT, and Capital Markets Journey, Navigating the Regulatory and Legal Landscape. Well, it was an interesting read and asked some very relevant questions on our subject. I thought that the part on immutability was quite interesting. For those of you who may not know what immutability in the context of blockchain is, it is that the blockchain, once it's written, can never be changed. So it's a permanent record. It's great for the auditors and those that need to comply, of course. However, in the legal context, immutability in a court of law is another matter entirely, as the blockchain does indeed record the history and ownership of assets, but would a court of law accept this as evidence of ownership? Well, they likely would, but there is no guarantee that the chain would genuinely reflect ownership. Rachel Kent, one of the co-authors of the report, weighed in on this and other legal ramifications of distributed ledger technology. Other questions the report looked at were whether securities traded using blockchain could be used as collateral. Would risk between counterparties increase or decrease? Are there any data protection issues to be aware of? And the real possibility of STP, just to name a few. So if you get a chance, be sure to download it for yourself. I put a link to the report below. Well, I think you would all agree that the regulatory part of DLT will be very difficult to finalize, to say the least. I mean, look at MiFID II. It was supposed to address problems from 8 years ago and has yet to be implemented. So I don't know how they're ever going to get around to putting these crypto rules on paper, though ESMA has put out a discussion paper last June on the matter. After all, audit was one of the core elements of MiFID, and blockchain seems like a compelling solution. Well, that being said, there have been some interesting crypto exchanges out there trading quite a bit of volume, relatively speaking, of course, that do have licenses. Bitstamp, for example, received a license from the Luxembourg Ministry of Finance to become the first regulated and licensed virtual currency exchange in the EU. The New York State Department of Financial Services offers a Bit license as well. In fact, each state in the US has a licensing policy, and that must be prohibitively expensive to comply to all of them. I can't imagine the paperwork. I think in the end, there's going to be a very long road to roll out national infrastructure supporting mainstream distributed ledger technology. Technology and innovation will always be ahead of the regulators and lawmakers, I'm afraid. Thunderbeam is an interesting startup. They're in the startup funding space that allows for trading in the secondary tokens offered by the startups they serve. It's kind of like a Seedrs, NASDAQ-linked cryptocurrency exchange hybrid with research about the companies they have on offer. In fact, the CEO, Katie Rousselep, hope I said that correctly, was the ex-CEO of NASDAQ Tallinn, so I'm sure she will bring a lot of experience to the company. Thunderbeam seems to be an easy way to get in on the blockchain boom. Startups will raise capital from tokens or initial coin offerings, as they're called. These coins will then trade in the secondary market. This allows investors to be able to cash out, of course, whenever they want, and not to endure those long holding periods where they're locked into the firms, as has traditionally been the case. They raised $2.6 million recently, and it's definitely an interesting model, allowing investors to get in and out of companies. Will make a compelling offering indeed. In other news, the SEC is seeking further comment on a Bitcoin ETF the Winklevoss brothers want to bring to the market. The Winklevoss brothers, that's a mouthful, are the lads that sued Mark Zuckerberg for stealing the Facebook idea. Well, this ETF has been in the works since 2014, and they hope to list it on the BATS Global Exchange. CoinDesk published an article on blockchain gold. This article says that EY and Paxos, based in New York, are looking at developing solutions for the gold market. BankChain is reported to be using their solutions for clearing and settlement. And that's all for our show this week here at Pulling Chain. Now, though, one last thing I want to say is that I have no investment or interest in any of these companies I've discussed today. I wouldn't want the regulars coming around for a chat after all, so I better make that disclosure. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave some comments below or send me an email. You can find me on LinkedIn, and that link is below as well. If you want to donate some Bitcoin or Ethereum to keep our channel alive, the addresses are below as well. So that's our show for this week. For Pulling Chain, I'm Steve Edge.